Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about kidney function and kidney structure, and we're going to start off by discussing the nephron. So the nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. This is the part that actually does the filtration, the absorption, reabsorption, and the secretion. So I'm going to be drawing the blood supply in red and the tube in green. So we first are going to have the blood coming into the kidney on a series of blood vessels. By the time we get to the place where filtration happens, the blood is going to be coming in on something called the afferent arteriole. It comes in and forms a little ball of capillaries. So I'm going to just draw it really roughly here. Kind of looks like that. And any blood that's left in the blood supply at the end is going to leave on something called the efferent arteriole. So blood comes in here. It includes water and ions and glucose and cells and proteins and all kinds of stuff. It's going to come in here. It's going to go through this capillary. And then anything that's left in there is going to leave on the efferent arteriole. And I always think about efferent because it has an E and it makes me think of exit. What happens to the stuff that leaves the blood? It actually goes into the kidney. And so I'm going to draw with green because green is for the nephron. Sorry, I misspoke. So here is where we have the blood supply, and then we have the nephron, and they're going to meet and they're going to shake hands. And what's going to happen is this hand, the blood, is going to pass along some of the stuff that's inside the blood to the nephron. So anything that fits is going to leave the blood and go into the nephron. So the first part of the nephron looks like this. It's a capsule, and it surrounds this little ball of capillaries. The ball of capillaries is called the glomerulus. So it kind of makes sense that the capsule around it is called the glomerular capsule. So the green part is the nephron, the kidney, and the red part is the blood supply coming in, the arterioles that are coming in to the capillary bed. So this first part of the tube right here kind of gets a little bit convoluted. It goes back and forth a little bit. And this is called the nephron tube. And this part of it that's very close to the capsule is called the proximal convoluted tubule, or PCT. At the end of those convolutions, the tube is going to dip way down into a different part of the kidney. So remember, when we looked at the gross anatomy of the kidney, there were two parts, the outer cortex and the inner medulla. So most of this part is in the cortex, but we're going to have a little dip down here of the tube deep into the medulla. So I'll write medulla down here so you guys know. Hope you can see that. And I'll write cortex up here. Okay, and the line is, somewhere along here. Now, we're going to have a loop. It's going to go down and it's going to come back up again on this side. Like so. And when the tube is going down, we call this the descending loop. Some people call it the descending limb. And it's going in this direction. And when it's coming back up again, it's called the ascending limb or loop. Okay? And you'll notice that the tube, the nephron tube, is going to come back up and it's going to come very close to the blood vessels where we first came in. In fact, there is a structure right here. I'm going to put little hash marks so you can kind of see it, called the juxtamedullary complex. So that's this part right here. After we go by the juxtamedullary complex, we're going to have some more convolutions in our tube. Now these convolutions are really far away from the glomerular capsule. The convolutions that were really close we called proximal convoluted tubule, and this part over here, because it's so far away, we're going to call it the distal convoluted tubule, or DCT. So we're going to have some convolutions, and this is going to then continue over here a little bit, and it's going to join in with something called the collecting duct. Now, by the time the stuff in the tube gets over here to the collecting duct, it's pretty much urine. So the collecting duct is going to actually join up with lots of different nephrons. So each collecting duct is collecting from many, many, many nephrons, and it's eventually going to bring the urine that has been formed down into the collecting part of the kidney, to the renal pelvis, the ureter, and then into the urinary bladder. We know now the proximal convoluted tubule is very close to the beginning of the nephron tube, to the capsule. The distal convoluted tubule is pretty far away from the glomerular capsule, and it's very close to, and it leads into the collecting duct, which will run through the cortex, through the medulla, and into the part of the kidney that collects the urine. So we have to finish up with where our blood goes. So our blood supply is going to come out of that glomerulus, and it's going to wrap itself around this part of the kidney tubule. It's actually going to do a crazy thing where it's going to go in the opposite direction as our loop. It's going to go this direction. So remember, the blood, anything that's left in the blood is going this direction. And it's going to continue going down, and it's going to follow the inside of our ascending loop and descending loop. I haven't given myself a lot of room here, but it's going to come out on this side, and it's going to wrap itself around our distal convoluted tubule. And the reason it's doing this is because there are several different processes. Then the blood goes back off to the heart. And really what I should have done is I should have drawn it sort of starting to turn blue, because we are going through another capillary bed at this point. So the interaction of the blood with the tube in this part is called the peritubular capillaries. So remember, over here we talked about how the blood in the glomerulus comes out into the glomerular capsule, and that's like a handshake, right? So that's where the first process happens, which is filtration. We then have to try and get some of that stuff back into the blood because we took too much out of the blood. And that's going to happen primarily here in this area of the proximal convoluted tubule. And then we're going to finalize what's happening to the fluid that's in the tube up here in the distal convoluted tubule, where secretion happens. So I'm going to talk about that in the next video. Go ahead and go to physiology of the kidney next.